Okay, time being 7 o'clock, call to order the Historic District meeting for November 26th. And see, first order of business. Sorry, looking at the wrong one. We have the approval of minutes for the meeting from October 23rd.
I make a motion we approve the minutes.
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those to approve the motion, raise your right hand. All opposed? Motion passes 5-0. And next on the agenda is projects of minimal impact.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do not have a report for projects of minimal impact this month.
All right, fair enough. We'll move on to public comments by visitors. If we have any general comments not related to an actual agenda item, this would be the time to step to the podium and have a few minutes to speak. Seeing none, we'll move on to old business. I see no old business tonight. So moving on to new business. The first item on the agenda is Hawkins Family Revocable Trust is seeking a certificate of appropriateness to construct a roof structure on a property located at 8 Beacon Street in the Historic Moderate Density District, Assessors Map 11, Lot 70, HDC Case Number 50, 2024. And Ms. Mears, do you have any?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant is proposing to reconstruct a porch roof to replace a pre-existing porch roof. The porch is proposed to be wood construction to be painted with a roof to match existing roofs at the building. Asphalt shingles with metal drip edge. And the applicant did provide some additional photos so you can see where the porch was that were all handed out tonight. This is ready for Historic District review.
All right. I see we have an applicant here, but we have a little technical issue with the microphone, so it'll be a moment while we sort that out. Oh, he's right there. Wouldn't hurt.
Wherever you'd like me.
That one's not working.
That one is?
This one is working. Will the camera hit this podium?
Do we have a,
Will the camera swing here?
Good.
or do we have a portable we could use?
We do have a portable.
Yeah, we
do.
did.
Send me there.
What?
It's in your room.
Yeah, it's in my room. Grab that.
And, the receiver's under here somewhere.
Yeah, the receiver's over here.
Hello.
All right, we good.
Perfect.
There you go.
Okay.
Good evening.
Apologize for the delay, but
Quite all right. It's no problem. Just more time we get to spend together.
if you don't mind just announcing your name for the record.
Sure. Matt Hawkins. I'm the owner of 8 Beacon Street in Somersworth.
All right.
The roof that we're looking to replace, or quite frankly, we just wanted to give it up to the council to ask you if you wanted us to replace it. The original structure didn't have a roof. We know this because we had gotten a call from a tenant. The roof had basically collapsed. It had dropped about 6 inches because the post had gone through the bottom of the construct of the roof, or the deck roof. And so we basically went there just to make sure that it wasn't going to fall any further, and we just started peeling apart, and it was coming apart in our hands. It was not dimensional lumber. It was newer lumber, newer 2x4 pine. So we recognized that it wasn't something that had been there for any amount of time. But from our perspective, we want to honor what the HTC has to say, and so we're happy to either replace it with what was there, or complete the outside of the building as it would be more historically accurate to be flat without a rooftop. So it's entirely up to the HTC what they'd like to see us do. We're happy to do either.
I guess with that, we'll, of course, we're supposed to ask if there's any abutters that may want to speak for or against. I don't believe there's, okay, seeing none, we'll move on to questions from
Yeah.
the board here. We'll start with Ms. Shawn.
This is actually kind of intriguing.
Yeah.
Because it does look like from the older pictures that you had the two bump outs and that may have had just steps up to it and it may not have had anything over it.
It didn't. That's the thing is, and we recognize this in the construction of it. And so this is, we own a lot of property in Somersworth. We respect the findings of the city. We work with the city really well. Michelle and her team are fantastic. And so we're happy to do either. But if we're going for historical accuracy, it is to leave no roof. If it's going for what was there that we took down, again, we make note of these things when every property that we've ever purchased anywhere, but in Somersworth specifically has, I'm the owner of the jail as well, that the old police station, we're doing all that work. So everything that we do, we bring it up to quite frankly, a very high level, while also maintaining the understanding that we're also trying to create affordable housing. So what we try and do is we try and create value when we do these projects. In this particular case, we're, again, as I said, we're happy to add it. The only challenge that we have is, or the only belief that we have is, if you want to be historically accurate, would be no roof. If you wanted to be accurate as to what was there previously, it had a roof. So we just don't know at what point in time you're selecting for historical accuracy, I guess.
So if you go with the no roof, which I kind of like, I mean, that means you have people egressing without any coverage, so you're going to have an ice problem and you're going to have to figure out
No,
what
because we would
that's
have.
going to look.
So there's gutters actually there. So there wouldn't be necessarily an ice problem right outside the door. There would only be that if there was water melting to that area, but we don't have water melting to that area. It would be carried to either end. And there's also, I believe there's also gutters. I can't recall if there's gutters on the bump outs. I don't recall.
There are,
But again, like I said, from our perspective, it's really for the HTC to weigh. We don't mind doing either one. So if we're going for historically accurate, we know that it didn't have that there before, because you see the original paneling from the house was
Did you
there.
snap? Yep.
And then on top of that, when we were there, I was actually there helping do some of the work, pulling it apart so it didn't collapse on a person, because that was an emergency for us. And so in pulling it apart, we saw that it was all modern pine that was used. There was no dimensional board in there. There was nothing like that. So we're happy to do whichever the council would like us to do.
So would you leave the porch as it is and just maybe put a different railing on it, or would you literally pull the whole porch off and put grand steps up?
I think
just
the
up to
grand
the
steps would be a problem. So we have a Navy vet that's there now.
Okay.
It's really important to us that we try and, we like veterans. We love them, actually. And so we don't want to make it more difficult on him, and we know that he kind of needs that space with walkers and
That's
canes
fine.
and such. So what we would do, or what I would propose that we would do, is basically just the cribbing was only there for the roof, so it wouldn't collapse on us as we were taking it apart. So we would just take the old, or the 4x4s that we put in place for the cribbing purposes. We didn't take them down because if we had to put a new roof up, we wanted the cribbing there for us to put up the new roof. So what we would do is we would just essentially, we could take, if we didn't do a new roof, we would finish off the siding there to match what is already on the building. And then we would just take the 4x4 posts that are 4 feet tall, or 6 feet tall, excuse me. We would just take those and we would cut them down to size and probably put like some sort of a post top on top of it, if you will.
And a railing, maybe like slat railing.
Yeah, I mean we can do a railing. I mean whatever. Like I said, we're We can change the, obviously you guys know what the challenge is. The challenge is that to what grade do you want me to go? Because I can put railing slats there. That's not, I mean, that's fine. It would just change what's there now today. So that's why I was looking forward to this meeting, was so you could give me direction on what you'd like to see. Because we can do, ideally, we do something that's pressure treated that then goes, because I know we don't want to put PVC there. Unless you want me to, but I can put pressure treated there. We can let it season for 12 to 18 months, and then we can paint it white to have it match the exterior of what the other white trim is that's there.
I'd like to see railing that matches on the same on the side of your building. If you right next to it on the side, you have lattice railing, it would kind of tie it in.
Can you show me where that, which one that is? Sorry.
Sorry, if you want to, can you?
May I approach?
You can. See how on your side buildings you have slat railings?
Mm-hmm.
So then that would kind of match.
No, absolutely. That's what we would propose. Yeah,
Okay.
we would be happy to do that for sure.
Sorry, I'm monopolizing. Someone else's turn. Tim, I'm sure has things to say.
Mr. Batavia and then Miss Barry after.
So just to help probably Mr. Hawkins's pitch here is, if you look at the photos that he supplied us as we were seating, the left side of the bay window actually has the remnants of crown molding, which was at the top of that, which dies back to the building.
Yeah.
And then at some point in the building's more recent history, that roof was added, burying that
Yeah.
crown molding.
Agreed.
So absolutely, this roof was not original in any way to this building. I'm not sure, it was definitely installed after, prior to 1986, is the most historic photo we have in the room of it, and it's there. So I would be in support to not put the roof back, fix the crown molding and the trim that is currently on the bow windows, or the bay windows rather, the bay set. And I'm not against him to trimming those 4x4 columns down to an appropriate post height. And I'm also not opposed to what Kimberly Schoen said, that infill it similar to the side. This railing method here is not original to the building.
No.
It's dangerous. It's not code compliant by any stretch, but it had been there since the 80s, that style.
Correct.
So it is what it is. It can go on as long as it goes on, but if it be up to him and asking to change it, I'd be in favor of that, as long as it matched the side entrance.
Yeah, to Tim's point, that's what we would go for. We would actually just match it to what's already there. The only thing for us is that we want, ideally, we let it season and age, so then we can paint everything to match it white, and then it really looks like a historically accurate house at that point,
It's fine.
with no sacrifice to safety.
I think you'll have a hard time saying 12 to 18 months. I would more lean towards 6 months to 8 at the end of the summer. Once the sun gets on it and cooks it, it'll dry quick.
Yeah, we just
But
want
we
to,
will require you to paint it if it is the board's wishes to approve as you've presented.
yeah, it's up to you guys.
But 12 to 18 months is a stretch.
Okay. Yeah, we can do it. And the only thing we're going for, and Tim spoke to it, is the only thing we're going for is to make sure it's dry. So what we do is we've seen with what happened during COVID, and we've seen really wet lumber, especially for PT. We've seen really wet stuff. So where we used to be able to do 6 or 9, now it's more like 12 to 18. But we're happy to test it. We have a moisture tester, and the only thing we don't want to do is paint it, make it look beautiful, and then watch it just pull away and fall off. And because then you actually have to make a bigger mess and trying to go back in and do stuff. So we're happy to do it. We wouldn't delay it. It's a fairly straightforward project for us.
Miss
All
Barry?
right, I'm going to throw a little bit of a wrench in the works on this,
ahead,
a
no
little bit.
problem.
I am completely in support with not doing the roof on that, but I will tell you, we just had an application here last month that was proposing something similar, where it was not a front right walkway right to the front of the door, and I feel like doing railings like the left side is going to make this look like a back porch to me. And I'm not going to be okay with doing those railings without a roof structure. I actually would prefer no railings, but again, for egress and code enforcement, I know that might not be the case, but I'm not in love with doing like a railing across the front of the house. So I don't think that will look right at the end of the day without a top to that, but I'm curious what others think.
I would just ask, what do you, could you define how it would be different if it was the stairs with a landing at the top? Is, you know, that changes your opinion, would change your opinion or not?
So normally, like if it's a central stair going right up to the house, you might have railings on the side, but they don't go across the front facade and they're not hiding that front elements. With this one, because the railing would go across the front and the stairs are to the side, I would not want it to be as often as it is on the left side, in my opinion, because again, I feel like
That would be a code issue. So if 4 inches.
that's where I understand that.
Yeah, so I'm
that's,
just, I'm happy to leave them as they are, but to Tim's point, my concern is
right.
this does not meet code on any level. So I'm happy to keep it as, historical as it sits today and not touch it. But I believe we improve the property and we improve safety if we put the spindles there.
Right, and even like the ones on the side, I'm not a huge fan of them as they kind of stand, because again, I get why it did it that way. I totally understand that. It's just one of those, because this is the front facade, I feel like this is starting to get into that realm of you're hiding a lot of these features, you're kind of making this what looks like to be a back deck. I don't know what the appetite is, but, and again, with code enforcement needing that, I want it to have a substantial landing because, again, if they need the access, I do understand
It's a
all
life safety issue.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a better answer. Tim?
So the existing building code would allow to be replaced like it is, although current code would say no way. Anything greater than 30 inches from the grade within 6 feet of that deck would need railing and balusters. So if it gets changed, it gets changed to code. If you replace like kind, what was is okay now. So if you wanted to replace with this sort of pyramid style baluster, you would be allowed to do that because it's been there since the early 80s and it's just keep going, keep doing it wrong because it's allowed.
So let me chime in on this real quick for a minute as well. I certainly am fine with having no roof on it because we know that's historically was not there. I'm also looking at the survey on the house, and unfortunately, this has lost a lot of its historic integrity with the siding, the windows, and what else does it talk about? Just the loss of trim with that siding because they cover a lot of that stuff off. I mean, if someday you were talking about peeling off that siding to redo it, it would be a great opportunity to possibly bring some of those features back. But obviously that's not what's proposed to us, and who knows if that'll ever happen. The side porch, I certainly think that it's more of a Home Depot standard railing that you see, and I don't believe that really fits in that district, but I certainly appreciate trying to match that. At the same time, I can understand what Laura's saying with hiding the front facade with the railing. Something that we don't see a lot that I think would be a potential solution to that is where they use like a fine black wire or thin metal rod to make the balusters, and essentially they almost disappear when you look at them, so it doesn't hide the features of the house. Then maybe that could be something to consider. But I certainly don't have I'm not dead set on one thing or another here.
I think you'd be surprised with what that will look like when it's painted white. I think it'll really pop on the house with the gray body. I've done about 80 of these, so the white is quite attractive. Agreed, as it sits in PT, it's rather unimpressive. But when you paint that white and it really looks, and you stand back, it does make the gray pop, and it does make the door colors pop. So,
Ms. Nguyen?
Thank you. I agree. I don't think that the railing system at the back decks is particularly appropriate for the district. I think if you did something with a bottom rail and a top rail where the balusters sit on, they die into the bottom rail instead of sitting and being face nailed to it.
but I wouldn't be redoing those. I wouldn't be redoing those. So I would go to
No,
match
I mean, on the
those.
front,
Yeah, sure.
I don't think I would say you need to match those and I'd be curious if, what others think, but I wouldn't try to match the ones on the back, but I would, if you be in favor of putting in a balustrade that has a real historic cap rail and bottom rail, and then the balusters sit within that same plane instead of face nailed to the railing.
Yeah, the other option, like Tim said, is basically to just leave it be, leave it as it is, and not touch it, not touch the railing system.
Right, and then the other thing you really could do that would, I think, go a long ways to making a whole building look better is to put some sort of apron under the deck. So that there are some finished boards or, some vertical boards or something kind of closing off that open space down there. That would dress up the property. Again, we can't require that. You haven't come and asked to make a new deck
True.
here.
Yep.
And I'm totally in favor of taking the roof off or not replacing the roof
Yeah.
and repairing where the roof came out. I agree with everybody else on that.
Yep. Yeah, I think when it would come time to replace the decking that's there, we would then look to make that move to like do some of the wide slat, wide slat pieces and some of those things and dress it up. So what we want to do is, get the useful life out of what's there. And then when a change like that has to be made, then we'll be before you again to say, hey, what's your input on this? And, this is kind of our idea. So yeah, that would be something we would handle in the future for sure.
So just for clarification, really, you're not looking to do anything with the porch now. It's structurally solid and
Yeah, structurally it's very sound. Yeah,
So-
structurally the porch is very sound.
so it's really just the roof that you're proposing to do something with.
Yeah, either
or-
the roof or continue it back to its historic accuracy, which is no roof, and then as Mr. Matavier said, to take the posts and just to cut them down to railing height to make them not stick out, and then remove the cribbing.
That porch was reconstructed, I think, in 2013,
Okay.
so it's not really that old.
Yeah, it's not. I didn't know the year, but I knew that it was. I mean, having touched that and having touched the roof above it, they were done different times for sure.
And the railing system that's there was mimicked what was there previously to 2013? And based on the historic photo from 1986, the V or the pyramid cross pieces weren't in that photo, but between then and the need to rebuild it, those were added for some reason.
Yeah, I'm not
But
sure.
then in 2013, they were just mimicked and replaced.
Okay.
So
Barry?
I am torn because I agree with you. Like, I don't want you to have to do work that I'm not going to love either way. I am kind of torn with looking at the 1986. I think you
That's
said
what I
18.
No,
Okay, maybe I
Sure
heard
did.
wrong.
check the minutes on that.
86.
Yeah. It was just very plain up and down, but they were very wide space, so it was easy to see through them. And I think I could see why they went with those cross a little bit, honestly. But knowing that you kind of want to leave it to get the life out of what's there, understand that I wouldn't be opposed, and I can't believe I'm saying it, of just getting rid of the roof and then cutting these and leaving it with those slanted. I hate to say it just because I feel like it's more open, it's more like
Yeah, I don't
less
disagree.
visible.
I agree. I agree.
Again, painted, maybe adding something underneath like a skirting, a lattice, skirting, something to kind of hide the depth to which it goes to the house. But
We could probably discuss that with the applicant when he comes in for the deck repair.
yeah, but I would say that I'd be very interested to know what the next, if we go this way, what the next thought would be, because I'm really torn with what would be appropriate there with an Italianate. And it's even said in the survey that this house is actually extremely unique because it's actually a very shallow depth house that they added additions onto, and it was like built, but then they kind of added Italianate features to it. So I'm at a loss for what actually would be appropriate to it. So I'm almost tempted to say I'd rather see what's there left, except for the roof structure.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, we would.
I'm not sure where others are lying on this.
Sure. Yeah, we would finish the front facade, like Tim said, Ms. Matevier said, and fix up the bump outs. That's what the goal would be there. And then it would look that's the right step in the right direction to then the next thing that we do would be either the deck replacement. And then when we do that, then we'd be before you again and we'd have renderings and this is what we're thinking. So that's how we've done it in the past. And that's usually worked pretty well. We want to we can't get all the way to where we want, but we can take the step in that direction, and is kind of my idea.
So I guess with that said, I'd be okay with this being knowing it's a half step to where we want to be,
Yeah.
but knowing it's going that way. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not a fan of the roof either way. So that's just me.
I'll make a motion that we allow the applicant to proceed without replacing the roof and with cutting the support beams down and capping them off so that they are in line with or reasonably appropriate lines for the existing porch, and then leaving everything else as is. Repairing the trim to the extent that he needs to is also acceptable. He's obviously got to patch the hole that is where
Yes.
the roof previously existed, with a preference that you replace some of the fun trim that looks like it was the cornice pieces and the pieces on the bump outs that they took out to put the roof in.
It ruined my week when I saw that the roof wasn't original, and we started to get into it, and I said, "Oh, this is newer pine. This is not going to go well." And then we got to the wall, and we just said, "It went over the siding." Oh, brutal. So I agree with you. I think the right thing to do is trim the posts down. We'll finish off the siding, and then we'll finish the bump outs so they look more period correct. Yep.
With that motion, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Any discussion on the motion?
Just, was there painting as part of the original request, or do we need to add that in as part of the motion?
So I think he's not putting any new boards in. It sounds like he's just
Dealing with the deck.
cutting things down.
Yeah,
No,
we're
but
just-
the actual railing is bare?
No, it's blue.
It's blue.
Oh, sorry, I'm looking at
It's
the
a,
wrong
it's
picture.
a, it's
Sorry.
a horrifically awful blue.
Already
We have no
painted.
control
Never
over
mind.
paint. Feel free. Go wild.
Never
Trust me,
mind.
that's going to happen.
Go
yeah.
wild.
Yeah. We didn't want to do anything before we had this hearing, so that way we could say, okay,
So-
what would we
A la
like to say?
Durham,
No
we have
further
no
discussion on
control
the
over
motion?
paint colors.
Cool.
All right, then, all in favor of the motion as presented, raise your right hand. All opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for coming before us.
Of course. You'll see me again, just hopefully not too soon with this deck. So.
The police station, I don't think, is in our purview.
All right. So moving on to the next item of business, we have 85 Elm. Owner LLC is seeking a certificate of appropriateness for a porch project at 85 Elm Street in the Business with Historic Overlay District, Assessors Map 10, Lot 177, HDC case number 51, 2024. Ms. Mears.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant is proposing to remove existing porch and replace the porch of same design compliant with current building codes and life safety. This is going to be constructed with a composite material. A new composite fascia is also proposed. This is a complete application, and the applicant, Mr. Stebbins, is actually going to call into his architect at some point if the board has questions, because he was unable to be here. So.
I have him on the cell phone. but
Okay.
traveling for-
You might have to use the hand.
Thanks. Yeah. Ben Stebbins, one of the owners of 22 Green Street, formerly 85 Elm Street. As you know, the porch was probably added in the 70s and was kind of slapped on then. Our goal is to replace it. It's kind of getting towards the end of its life. To bring it up to current building code, you need to go from, it's currently 8'11" to about 10 feet. Keeping the same design except making it more uniform. Right now you can see the top is solid wood, and then you go into different style. Also the concrete going up. It's a mixture of concrete and wood supports throughout. So we're just making it a lot more uniform with our design. And if the board has any questions, happy to answer.
Just a quick clarification, is this the entire porch structure all the way around the building, or is it specifically
So
one
we'd be
area?
replacing where the staircase is, and then we'd want to match, if you go to, it is
So if you're standing on,
3.01 overall elevations, it shows replace existing rail with a new 42-inch railing, so we bring that up to code as well.
So again, just to be
Do
really
you want to
clear.
let public hearing first, or
I'm sorry?
do we want to do public?
yeah,
hearing?
is there anybody who would like to speak to or for or against this particular project? Okay, seeing none, we'll just continue on.
So my question is, I'm looking at your page 3 of 11, which is the front part of this process.
301?
It says photo 3 of 11 in the packet that you gave us.
Sure.
Does?
On the bottom right-hand side, there's a page number 3 of 11, 4 of 11, 5 of 11 on the pictures.
That's the survey.
Sorry, the survey.
You don't have a copy of the survey.
Okay. I was like, I don't see that in my handout.
Yeah, so the survey's provided by the city. The application has the additional stuff.
Sorry. So I'm trying to figure out, if you flip to page 3 of 11, are you trying to replace the wraparound too, or just the side porches with the stairs?
Can you show me which
I
photo
can.
you're looking at?
So I'm looking at this one, which is 3 of 11. See the front porch?
Yes, so we'd be replacing these to bring them up to code as well.
So what are you doing with the balusters on the bottom?
This is all staying the same. This is structurally fine.
Okay.
Sorry, Miss Berry, then Mr. Matavia.
More of a personal opinion going back to roof structures on these. I really hate that top roof on that 3 structure. Just because it is a mansard. I think it looks so funny there. I guess my question is there any willingness not to do a roof structure, or is it because that's a main egress that it needs
There's
to
a main
have one?
egress, and we need to keep it free of snow. and
Okay.
ice.
Ugh, I hate that. I guess I'll go to Tim.
So, to be clear, basically, anything on this building that currently has a railing is part of this discussion. You're replacing all porches with railings, all railings on porches.
We're bringing all the railings up to 42 inches. Correct.
So, and you mentioned in the application that you're going to be replacing them like in similar and in kind. Do you know how many different kinds are currently there? It appears there's like 4. There's turn balusters for the ones that probably face Elm Street. Oh, no, sorry, not Elm Street, but more Main Street side. And then the part that faced Green Street is square ones with nailed onto the side of the lower. The top is a solid piece of plywood. And then the railings that go up the stairs are also of a different dimension. So there's at least 4 in the pictures that you've provided. So replace like kind, which kind are you replacing?
So you can see on page 3.02, we give an example of what we're looking to replace it with.
So did you mean 301?
No, 302.
It's there too.
Yeah, so if you look at 301, you're removing the round columns, making them square columns. You're making them 42 inches, but now you're adding midspan posts where previously there were no midspan posts. On that particular side that 301 sort of focuses on, those are turn balusters, at least on 2 levels. And these are now mid-post with square composite. Likewise with the front railing that faced Elm Street, those have no mid-post, all turn balusters. Now they're gonna go to square columns and square mid-post, and it's not like Kine, that's for certain. Follow me? So if you look at the
So
ones,
there's square right now on, if you look at existing deck close up, the top right picture is 0.01. You can see that whole entire corner is square all the way down.
that one, but look underneath it, that's the part that faces Elm Street. Those are one span, turned balusters, and round columns.
Yep.
You're not proposing to maintain that look at all.
Well, those are staying round right there. Those are not getting changed.
That's not what your artistic rendering shows.
Yes, it is. If you look at
And the
3.01.
And the clear span from round column to round column with the round balusters. And if you look at, all right, 3.02, what you said, square columns and square balusters. 3.01 is the same appearance as mid-rail, mid-post, square, with the round columns is shown on 301. But there's mid-span square columns centering between round columns when that isn't at all what's there now.
Okay, so let's why don't I remove the application for that side of the porch, and we'll come back to you there, and let's just focus on the staircase. That's a life safety issue right now.
I'll give you that. I've been on those decks when the previous owner wanted to repair them. I made some strong suggestions and talked them through some things, and the last conversation I had with the owners, I think it was Michael and Michael Properties, decided that it was too expensive to fix correctly, and they patched what was there, so that's what you have now. And I would agree to remove that large wraparound front porch from this discussion, because I think that really needs to be revisited. It's a very significant original styled architectural feature where the side decks and egresses and the whole covered porch system is such an add-on for some other time that it detracts from the building, but it is there, it is what it is. But that front wraparound porch is consistent with that time period, that architecture, and that's something we'd probably like to try to maintain to the best of our ability. With the clear span railings, the round balusters, no mid-post, round columns, and if they're in decent shape, they may be, just to maintain those and that look. I'm not terribly opposed to what you've presented for the side of those other things. Is I counted 4 different styles currently existing there, and no getting around it. It's ugly now.
Might as well be ugly again.
It'll be better, but it won't be period accurate. I don't think there's a way to make those side porches period accurate at all. They weren't there to begin with. That's when this building was turned into an apartment building. I believe this was originally a single-family home. There's a grand staircase when you first walk in that front door on that farmer's porch that's beautiful. If you focus on the pieces, you can still see as they die into covered walls and plaster that's been buried behind them. But this building once was quite a showpiece. At least to maintain that covered porch and that wraparound with all of its features and its glory, and just to bring it up to a better condition, I'd be supporting. So that's all I have to say.
Ms. Berry?
So I'm definitely in favor of maybe removing that front single porch that you just talked about that wraps around the original house. And if we just focus on the 3-tier, like I said, I get the roof structure. I just hate how it's encroaching on that mansard. But again, coming back to, I don't know that there's a better way to do it. I would not want to raise it. I would not want to, go into, because you have windows there. So it is what it is. And I understand why it happened that way. I am a little torn my first gut instinct was also to try to maybe have turned balusters on this addition of the 3 staircases, but the more I think about it, as this was a later addition, it's more of a representation. I think we have a date, if I thought I saw somewhere, from when that was added. I kind of like having it be a little bit different with square and square railings, because it does identify that this was not original to the building. You know, I mean, I think that's pretty evident, but I think that keeps it separate from the original. But when you do come back for the other part of the porch, I would keep that in mind, that I
Thank you.
very specifically would want to keep that part more historically accurate, with that in mind. So that's kind of where I'm sitting at the moment, where I don't think I'm opposed to any of the renderings or the anticipated changes to the 3 structure for egress.
Ms. Nguyen?
Can I ask why the mid posts were put in? The low post in between the columns?
I can ask. 1 second.
I can probably help you with that answer.
No, I have an
Hey, Adam, you
idea,
there?
but I want to verify.
Yeah, can you answer why there was mid posts?
Yeah, are we referring to the 3-story porch or the existing?
At the 3-story.
Porch, correct?
Yep.
3-story.
At the 3-story.
Yeah.
Ben, can you have Adam
Make
introduce
sure that we
himself?
met the requirements for the structural integrity of the railing, knowing that we'd be anchoring some supports so that we could have the minimum lateral force restraint on that. But I do know that there are systems that could potentially span that with a similar look, and maybe even the same system. So it was there just to be, safe for the lateral force requirements of a railing. But we could, code-wise review if there's a system that would give the same look minus those mid-posts.
Adam, can you introduce
Sorry.
yourself?
Yes, sorry. My name's Adam Morrill. I'm with Morrill Design Studio.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for answering that. Because I was going to say, I think there are fiberglass systems that are stronger and can span longer lengths, like up to 16 feet. And that shouldn't be required if you can find the right system. But I have another comment about the roof structure at the 3-story portion. If you look at the existing building close-up, the top left on 0.01, you can see pretty clearly that both the mansard roof and the porch have they have a soffit. So in your rendering, the roof does not have a soffit over the porch. It's just kind of a really thick, all pretty tightly spaced on top of each other, instead of having a kind of break between the structural beam and the actual molding, where you could have a soffit there that would match the existing building a little better. As opposed, because sometimes you could end up with just this really thick, modern-looking roof structure.
Okay. Yeah, and that was a conscious decision to differentiate itself from that original roof edge, as well as you can see that this porch roof does not extend as far past the upper roof edge. We were trying to pull it back a little bit so that it wasn't as prominent, and so that roof footprint was a little bit smaller than what had originally been there for this, late addition porch. But I certainly think you could extend that roof line. The constructability of that's no problem, certainly. But the idea originally was to reduce the footprint of that in such a way that it was less prominent. But
Yeah, and maybe it's just a matter of it could be a much smaller soffit. I hear you, and I can see why you would want to try that. I agree in a way, but I also worry that what you have in the rendering on 3.01 just looks really kind of flat and contemporary to me. But I'd be curious to see if others agree on that point, or if you're happy just to get rid of the deep overhang.
Ms. Berry?
I guess for me, I do like that it does come back from matching to the edge of the mansard. I do like that, and it opens up the coining from that side. I don't know that I have necessarily a ready opinion about the roof, though, with the chunkiness of it. I'm curious how others feel.
I'll chime in, and I do like how they've tried to shrink it down a little bit just to, I guess, show off some of those features that have been encroached upon. So it's my take on it.
Mhm.
I could also note that if it's of any value, I certainly think that there is maybe a little bit of extra depth in that upper roof that could be reduced. And so we have sort of the upper fascia and then the mid level. That mid level of trim may be able to be reduced slightly so that that overall roof fascia could shrink by maybe 2 to 3 inches.
That would make a big difference, actually, because I'm looking at your elevations. I'm thinking it looks great on the elevations. It's just the rendering that I don't like, and so maybe it was just a glitch, kind of in how it was modeled in your model there.
They're both modeled from the same.
It's the same.
It's in
Okay.
Revit and it's rendered. So what it is in the 2D elevation doesn't have any skewing for the perspective. So what you see in the 2D elevation is what was truly proposed. You might be seeing a little bit of a fisheye as we're trying to do the rendering, if that makes sense, almost like a camera may do.
Okay, I'm happy with it then. If you could, especially make it a little thinner, I think that would help.
Richard.
Miss Barry?
I definitely perked up at 2 to 3 inches smaller if possible on that roof line. I'm not sure if everybody still wants to have a discussion, but I do have a motion possibly ready based on conversations, but
I just want to make sure they're not touching the main porch on the house, the very front. I don't see it on any of these renderings. I just want to make sure that the very front that's going to be right next to the building that's going up is not in this process.
No,
he's
my understanding
proposing
is,
to take it off of this.
No, so there's
Take off the porch.
yeah,
Take it off of the
as in-
proposal.
So just
Thank
for
you.
clarification, the proposal right now is to do nothing with the front porch.
well, and see, there's another porch right out here. So I want to make sure that the only porch that is being touched are these three
Yeah. So
levels.
just to clarify with the applicant, the front porch that wraps around that's a floor above the ground level, plus the ground level
Tree.
porch that's towards the parking area, both
Correct.
of those
No,
are
no,
not
and
gonna
like
be.
our plans show that anything that's called out, that's actually changing. The only thing that was changing on that existing wraparound porch was replace existing rail with new 42-inch railing. We didn't call anything out
Yep.
on
So-
any other changes.
So just for clarification, all work being discussed tonight would be directly on that three-story porch structure and nowhere else.
Yep.
Okay.
I do think there was some confusion from Tim's comments that they maybe thought that the whole front porch was being replaced.
Well, initially that,
Yeah,
I
But he
believe
wants
that
to
was, but
remove
he's
that.
actually
Move it from the application.
Thank you.
but it is just the
adjusting the
railing.
application to
It's just the
simply
railings, correct.
be the three-story structure. Does that clear up all your questions? Do we have any other questions or discussion?
All right, I have a motion to accept application with amendments of application to be only for the 3-story porch structure, to minimize the roof, the 2 to 3 inches, as suggested by the architect, I'm sorry, is
Is Adam?
by Adam.
Yep.
And then also, I'm okay with the railing height and it being the material, but if I would like it to have the spanning to the columns without that additional support. If that's not possible, maybe come back without those thick supports in the middle between the columns. I'm okay if it's, like I said, a PVC or another support system that's not wood.
When you're ready, Richard, could you repeat the motion?
Yes. So the motion would be as presented with the application only to construct, to perform work on the 3-story structure, nothing to the other porch structures. The roof structure to be shrunk slightly, several inches from current dimensions, and the what's proper, mid posts in the railings to be removed, so it's a single railing structure from upright supports to upright support. Does that make sense? And
Code enforcement understands that. I understand it.
So the railings will then, the proposal is, in the amendment, for the railings to clear span from support column to support column. No mid-column. Right?
correct.
I'll second that motion
All right.
with the amendment.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand.
Aye.
And those opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Great, thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, too.
Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you again for the other porch.
All right, so moving on to the next item on the agenda, we have Jeffrey Westover is seeking a certificate of appropriateness to replace a porch and steps at 9 Highland Street in the historic moderate density district, Assessors Map 11, Lot 58, HDC case number 52, 2024. And Ms. Mears?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant is proposing to replace existing front and back steps and side porch, proposing to construct a new with PVC deck board and composite railings. He did submit some additional information over the last week, and the HDC shall consider whether this is a complete application.
My turn?
Sorry, we have the applicant here. If you just state your name for the record.
My name is Jonathan Buchanan, Maintenance Coordinator for Real Property Management, Dover. Behind me is Zach Baker. He is the lead surveyor and estimator for this project. I believe the purpose of this is not so much to build it, because we're not changing any structure whatsoever. We're just going to replace what's existing. And it's currently PT board, which in the winters, of course, expands and cracks, and it doesn't last very long. Mr. Westover, having 4 properties here in Somersworth, is trying to bring up each property one project at a time to improve it, but we want to keep with history, and I understand that. The current decking on the right side from the street going to Unit 7 is long, and it's got a covered roof, and it's not planted into the ground correctly in accordance to code. It just sits on cinder blocks, which is not safe. To the left is 2 steps to Unit 9, which is just railing or PT railing and steps. It needs to be replaced, which will be duplicated in looks. In the rear is another 2-step, which is an egress for Unit 7. And then there's a 2-story in the back on the left, which goes up to Unit 9's egress, emergency. The top of that one, the railing is not within code, and you can fall through it. So the point is to replace everything. But what he would like to do, Mr. Westover, is instead of doing PT, and having to do this again in 10 years because it just doesn't last. Plus, come this spring, we'd have to stain it and paint it for preservation, which would have to be done every year. He would like to put composite, which would match the graying samples of other porches in that area, because the composite comes in whatever color you want. That would not have to be painted. It would not have to be replaced every 10 years. It can last 25 plus. If there's any structural questions, I'm going to revert back to Zach unless you have any questions for me.
No. Yeah, first we'll just see if there's any others who would like to speak for or against. I assume we're not going to have any, seeing nobody else really here, so we'll continue on with your discussion. We'll start off with Ms. Berry and then Mr. Mativier afterwards.
All right, it's our porch night, obviously. Honestly, I am not going to have a problem with the back stairs, the 2 stairs up. I think those need improvements as they're standing right there. I'm not opposed to, thank you for bringing samples. We love them because then we can actually see it. I'll pass off.
So I'll clarify. So the railings will be composite, and that's a PVC deck board. Probably it being composite 60% wood, 40% PVC. It's just lighter, lasts longer, less maintenance. And most of the time, it's the most.
The only question I'll have around the decking, is it's going to be window framed, right? Like you're not going to see any of the raw cut edges. Yes, perfect. I'm going
I
to
do have
pick.
to ask you to speak in the microphone.
Yeah. Just for those at home so they can hear your answers.
No, absolutely.
I'm gonna pick on the side porch a little bit, and just so for any of those wondering why I'm leaning one way on this side porch versus other porches we've talked about tonight, this is a side porch, and it's not the main front facade that you're looking to do a full railing around the side. I'm okay with this for that reason, and I know earlier I stated I'm not loving that across the front facade, and that's why. I think that this will help, and I don't think it will hinder the original appearance of this being a Greek revival and then Italianate features added to it. My only question is, so the support columns on the side porch, you're leaving those as is, or are those being removed as well?
For the steps, 2-story steps?
For the side.
Yes, sorry, those posts, yes, those will stay the same. The railings will die into the posts.
Okay, then, yeah, I have no problem with what's been presented, but I'll leave it to others.
Mr. Matavia?
Are you familiar with the history of the building at all?
Personally, no.
So we have historic photos. Date is, they're not really that old, 86. Personal knowledge of the property well before that, that side porch never had railings at all. Code wouldn't require them. They're less than 30 inches off the ground. And because of the fronts, the stairs didn't have them, they would need to have a handrail, but not necessarily balusters. So that's a consideration even monetarily and for the look. You don't have to have railings along that whole side porch. And it's more original to the home that they didn't. At some point in the home's history, a mid-rail and top rail was added for whatever reason that was, just for maybe a safety feature. A resident wanted to have something there, and that's fine. But the original features of the home had none. And it looks like the grade used to be higher as well in the older photos, where erosion seemed to, more recent photos, lowered that lawn, which I'm not sure its elevation now. If it was less than 30, you wouldn't need a railing, but.
When I was over there, it was like 20 inches.
Yeah, so the railing's an option, it's not a requirement. And if you're proposing to infill between column to column with the composite and the multiple balusters, I'd be not supportive of that because it does then to bring that whole side porch into a very modern era where it's, in some places it works, some places it doesn't. And I don't feel that in this particular side of that building would help. The two steps going into the side, the rear L, they're in desperate shape. They've been jury-rigged over the years by the previous owner, who I'm also very familiar with. Getting that owner to put paint in the building was difficult, so there was something there that at least this tenant could step into. But anyway, my feeling is I would support the entire project as presented, except for that side long porch that I would not want the baluster and composite railing.
Ms. Nguyen?
I just want to point out, we do have an example, he gave us an example of the railing and called out what the manufacturer is. And just to be clear, it looks, you haven't illustrated this, but we would not like to see any mid-posts if you did put a railing on that side porch.
We wouldn't need to anyways because of the span between the posts. It doesn't require it.
Okay, great. And then here, just so you can see what he was referencing, we do have the historic photo with no railing on that porch, and you can see what it looked like originally.
That photo was 86, but my memory has it going back much earlier than that. I was brought up on that hill. I'm familiar with the property for most of my life. It never had railings up until probably 1990, where someone put the 2x4 up.
May I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
With what you said? So with the railing that's there now, that has modernized what was there in 86.
In 86, there was no railing.
I would prefer not to have that.
If the elevation is less than 30 inches, correct. If it's greater than 30 inches, I would almost suggest to add grade, because the grade has been eroded. The lawn's lower than it was. And it'd be, honestly, actually, a cost savings. You wouldn't have to purchase all that, or labor to install it and all of that.
I'm gonna check the height of that porch from
Just
grade.
within 6 feet of that deck platform, anywhere within 6 feet, if it's 30 inches or less, no railings required.
Love that.
Do you need a handrail at those stairs, though?
If it's 4 or more, you need a handrail, but not necessarily balusters.
Right. Thank you. Like that.
Ms. Schoen?
I'm also opposed to putting railings there. I really like the open look. Maybe it's because I have a similar older house. I don't think a railing there would be appropriate.
I haven't seen that picture now. I agree with you.
You can,
Love that.
if you have that ripped
Looks like a
apart, hand it to
farmhouse.
them,
I
yeah.
did show them. They came over.
But I was able to take that with.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Misunderstood.
All right, so do we have any further discussions or questions?
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to approve as presented with the following amendment, that railings on the long side porch be omitted with the exception of a handrail for the stairs. The AZAC or composite decking is acceptable. So the only amendment to the applicant would be to not put railings on that long easterly side of the building.
You would be fine with composite on
It's really in the side and the back of the building. It's not, those are Ls that were added at some point in the building's history to turn it in. It was probably added when the church owned it back in the 1890s. Yeah.
And I'd agree. It's definitely on the back side where it's hard to even see from the public way, so.
Quick question to Tim's motion before I possibly second. Do we need to put a caveat in that they will meet code requirement if it is above 30 in a different way?
So I was gonna state that if the elevation, so God forbid we have to, we can always lower the elevation back to by a couple inches.
They could lower that elevation to make that meet. They could raise the grade to increase.
I just don't want us to get into a,
As long as
doesn't
it,
meet code.
right, then adjustments would need to be made, and that'd be up to the code compliance officer. One thing we didn't discuss before, we were still in discussion of the motion,
Sure.
is the entire deck framing being removed.
Yeah, so we will be replacing all the framing.
And in that deck framing being removed, what's the orientation of the deck boards now?
Right now, they run long ways, so we're gonna turn it and run them into the house.
I'm going to remind microphone for those at home.
So right now, the orientation is the joists run from street to the door. We would change the orientation so they would we would put our ledger against the house, have our girder, thank you, east and west, and then the deck boards would run
So the
long.
deck boards would run the long way.
Correct.
Good, because doing it again that way is, you can't do anymore?
No.
Because they fail?
Yes,
So
100%.
That's why you're here again?
Yes.
So it's not allowed to, and that's a substructure, so it's not part of our appearance, but it'd be against code to build it the way the frame is this way.
No, absolutely. We make sure that we build well within code. We like to say we overbuild our decks personally, where most people are going to put 3 to 4 stringers on a set of stairs. We do 6 to 8, just for a small example. So like when it comes to little meticulous things like that, we make sure that we stay well within code.
And so amend my own, the orientation of the deck boards shall run parallel to the main structure. The end grains of those deck boards, when it approaches the stairs, shall have a return picture frame, so the end grains of those returns are not exposed as the nosing of the first tread.
Yes.
So the motion is to approve it with the condition that the railings on the right-hand side porch be omitted, and the deck boards will run parallel to the building with the picture frame edge boards. That,
Can we reword the right-hand side? Can we call it the side porch? Because I think that's how we mostly reference. Just
Yeah,
there's
there's
so
two
many
sides.
entrances into this building, I hate to say
That's why I
it.
We
said
call it
right-hand,
the
but-
east side. It's the downhill slope.
east side porch. Does that work? So railings on the east side porch be omitted, and the deck boards will run parallel to the building with picture framed edge boards. That satisfy your motion?
It does, which made me think of a question. Lattice?
So vertical skirting, there's vertical skirting currently there, so we'd replicate the current vertical skirting.
Was that mentioned in the application?
It was not, but it was.
So to also include vertical skirting. No diamonds, no squares.
No. Southern Mississippi, where I used to live.
So, you need me to read the whole thing or just add in with vertical skirting boards under porch? Does that work? Any other discussion? Or a second, I guess, is
Well,
we're
I
still
have a
looking for
quick
a
question.
second.
That's all amendments to only the side porch because I just want to make sure you're not enforcing vertical skirting on the back stairs.
Oh, gosh, no.
I'm just
I don't know how
making
you do
sure
that.
for clarification, right? Like, I just want to make sure it reads that we're only requiring that on the side porch, the east porch.
On the side easterly porch needs vertical
And
skirting.
all of this is written off of the side porch.
Okay,
so-
perfect. I just want to make sure, like,
The rest
put them in a weird
as presented.
thing.
All porches except side porch approved as presented.
I'll just put in other porches as presented.
Do all of the things as you asked, except for the side porch that we've kind of, the other things to do.
There is some lattice on that back stair, though.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, it's.
Are you planning to replace
little-
it?
That was hodgepodge.
Going to, it looked like just.
Sorry. We weren't going to. It just looked like makeshift thrown up lattice personally. So
I think it was to keep the trash underneath the stairs.
Yeah.
gotcha. So hopefully that won't be the case anymore. So
If you look at the top of that two-story, you'll see the railings are unsat. I mean, children can fall right through those, which is why we wanted to expedite this.
Yeah, that's
Not
bad.
safe. We're going to make that good.
I
We're gonna make that
was very
good.
familiar with those problems for many, many years, so yeah.
All right, so do we have a second? Okay, now a second. Any more discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, raise your right hand. Those opposed? Also passes 5-0.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, other important people with these name tags, thanks. I really enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Also, the packet we gave you, it does give you a history and the significance that it still maintains. So I definitely would take a peruse and maybe give it to the homeowners.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. And we'll be back for his other properties as well. Thank you. And good evening.
All right, I don't believe we have any other new business tonight, so moving on to workshop business. Do we have any workshop business?
I just have a quick update. I was in communication with the school about the plaques. The CNC machine, I believe is what it is called, has been down. I believe it's back up and running, and I've asked for a new template to be drawn up with some of the edits and the spacing that we had talked about. I haven't heard back yet, but again, I believe they said it was back up and running, but if that's not the case, obviously we're not going to get a sample yet. As soon as we have that, I will try to schedule that next workshop. But that's where we stand at the moment.
All right. Anything else? All right, moving on to communications.
But that's not workshop.
So moving on to communication miscellaneous. We could definitely discuss that meeting at this point. Ms. Mears?
Yes, we just have some good news. We did receive word from New Hampshire Division of Historical Resources that we were awarded the $20,000 master plan chapter grant, so that will be something that will be going to city council for a vote to accept the funds for that at the next city council meeting. And we were also awarded the $7,000 to hold the training session. So that will likely be in May. So hopefully working with the board in the next few months to nail down some workshop topics for the commission.
Fair enough. And with that, the 20,000 that you mentioned for the master plan, would that also cover a survey for the district, or is that
That's separate.
okay?
Yeah.
Just getting into the meeting, we were discussing the historic advisory committee that Tim hinted towards.
I was just gonna say, you might want to give a reason you're asking that question, because we haven't talked about the meeting at all, so.
Yes. So communication miscellaneous, like I said, the historic district advisory committee that we held a meeting, I believe it was last week on Wednesday. So maybe it was Tuesday. It was Tuesday. Sorry, it's been busy lately. So Tuesday the 19th. Yes, which I guess, do we want to give any updates on that?
If you would like to, go ahead. You're talking, but I can give more if needed.
Well, obviously the meeting discussed, this is a meeting between the city council and the historic district to kind of see if we can streamline process or make improvements where we have deficiencies and so on. And I think one of the main takeaways from that is looking at regulations. You know, we basically came up with 3 options, kind of status quo, leave stuff as it is, maybe make minor adjustments, but it's kind of the status quo. And then another option was to pursue the idea of adjusting form-based codes in the area, especially the downtown business area, the downtown core, as we might call it. And the third option was, I'm drawing a blank on that now.
The third option was to pursue potential hiring an expert to survey and give us some professional suggestions from around New England.
Yes, and that's where the question came in with the 20,000, if that would cover that sort of thing, but we've already answered that. So, obviously the status quo is just status quo. Either we can make adjustments, it might make stuff more complicated, maybe lose stuff, but I think we're going to pursue the idea of making a proposal on some form-based codes, work with that, and see if that is something that can be hashed out to present a working idea with that. It's one of our... Consultant was the word. Yes, consultant. So, it's only our second meeting, so obviously it's very beginning stages about this whole topic, but that's where we're at with it. Unless Laura has something else she'd like to add in, or Tim either, for there as well.
Just adding in that it was also discussed not just only having consultants possibly come in to do work, depending on which way we want to go, but also making sure we're connecting with the State Historic Preservation Office for New Hampshire, which I will be reaching out to them to see if they will come give us some best practices that they've seen or the best course of action in this, because again, they see this throughout our state and with other districts, and also being a certified local government, we have representation there. But yes, so hopefully we will have a lot more outside professional opinions to help us along with this.
All right. Anything else? Ms. Mears?
I would just add, the certified local government funding is available to certified local governments, so we could apply next year for funding for this too. So everybody's
Or a
aware.
consultant, is that what you mean?
Hire a consultant,
Yeah.
yes. So,
All right. Mr. Mativi, did you have something?
I did. Motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second? All those in favor to adjourn, raise your right hand. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. We're adjourned.